And welcome to another edition of What Level of Hell Are We Currently In? And this is a nice little midweek roundup of all the news that you may have heard, maybe you haven't, because you're probably sitting in a fetal position like so many of us right now these days. But we've got a lot of stories to get through. So let's just dive right in. We're going to cover four things today. First, interesting news. A House Democrat files impeachment articles against RFK Jr. We're going to talk about what that really means, but why it is still important. Then we're going to get into Jasmine Crockett, who has thrown her hat in the ring and is going to be running for Senate in Texas. What's interesting about this, as opposed to maybe some other races, is not just what's going on with her and the race specifically, but it's really the chatter from the left wing of the party. And do people love her or hate her? I don't know. I think the jury's out. We'll have to talk more about that. And then we're going to talk about the Trump administration. They're moving to end major student loan forgiveness plans. She says, we will not tolerate it. Ooh, I got so many thoughts, and I'm sure Desmond does as well. And then we're going to end on a very serious note. The ACLU has reported, as have many other outlets, that detained immigrants have detailed physical abuse and inhumane conditions, aka torturous conditions, including against children, at largest immigration detention center in the United States. ICE is completely out of control. And I've said it again once and I'll say it again. It needs to be abolished. We're going to talk all about that. But to kick things off, let's go back to NBC News. House Democrat files impeachment articles against RFK Jr. The impeachment push by Representative Haley Stevens, a Democrat from Michigan, is almost certain to be blocked in the GOP-controlled House. She had vowed to do this back in September, arguing that his actions and public remarks have jeopardized public health, increased the cost of healthcare, and cut important medical research. The New York Times first reported that she had filed this article. Now, in a brief Tuesday night, Stevens said she had heeded the call of pro-science groups who have warned that Kennedy's 10-month tenure leading the HHS has cost American lives, actual physical blood on his hands, and that he must be removed. Desmond, what are your initial thoughts hearing about the articles of impeachment against RFK Jr.?
Natalie, I want to throw it back to you here. This is actually your wheelhouse. I know that you talk about public health more than I do, and this has been a conversation that you've consistently brought to the forefront here. So I actually want to get your take on this first, because this is a really big deal as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I thank you. First of all, what took them so long? Uh, I really feel like day two, they could have probably started drafting up these articles. I mean, the reality is, I was just talking about this with Dr. Natalie Gentili, not this specifically, but what's been going on at the CDC and the HHS. The CDC at this point is a completely useless institution. And I've been talking to a lot of professionals in the sciences, and they are saying now, you cannot trust anything that's coming out of the CDC. You cannot trust anything that the HHS is saying. A lot of clinicians, physicians, and immunologists, researchers, they're now forming alternate groups to share information. This is so outrageous, so heinous, so disturbing on every level. And now with the hepatitis B vaccination not being recommended for infants, we went from 20,000 deaths a year before that recommendation was put in place to 20. And at one point it was zero. And now they want to allow that to basically evaporate. Actual babies are going to die. This is our pro-life right-wing group here that is going to allow infants to die. I mean, you could go through 100 things, Desmond, that this man has done that warrant him to be removed from office. But what frustrates me most is not just him. It's all of the enablers around him. It's Dr. Oz. It's all of the Republicans that voted to allow this man to head up this organization with absolutely no experience or credentials to do so. He's made a mockery of public health. We're seeing measles on the rise. Pertussis is back in Florida, which is deadly to children. Obviously, you don't even want me started on COVID. So for me, what upsets me the most is the fact that someone like this is allowed to make recommendations for any of our well-being when all they have done is caused more pain, more harm, and actually brought about death.
Yeah. Remind me really quickly, who brought the articles of impeachment to the House?
Yes, that is Democratic Representative Haley Stevens of Michigan.
The thing that I'm most confused by is I remember just, what, a week or two ago, where
Mm-hmm.
people were talking about possible articles of impeachment being brought to the House floor for Donald Trump. And it was smacked down by Hakeem Jeffries, who said that we're not really going to waste our time with doing something like that. It'll never get through the Senate, so there's no point in doing it. I'm just wondering what impeachment is supposed to be used for. Because
Mm-hmm.
let me start by saying this. I agree that RFK Jr. needs to be impeached. I think Donald Trump also needs to be impeached. I just want to see a unified message here from the Democratic Party because is it true that this impeachment will, ultimately not lead to RFK being removed from office? Absolutely. Because of the process of impeachment, it will have to go to the Senate, at which point it actually needs 67 votes. So all of the Democrats, including 20 Republicans, that's never going to happen. We all know that. But I think what's more important is that your representatives are showing a spine here. And they are showing that the things that you are doing should lead to your removal of office. And then them demonstrating that they're willing to vote for that. Have it be on the record. Let your own voters know that you are willing to fight on their behalf. So I think while it may never succeed in actually removing him from office, your people need to understand that you understand that what has happened, should equate to them being removed from office. So I'm on board with it. I think it needs to happen. And I am kind of just disgusted at the fact that more Democrats aren't willing to go down this road, not just with RFK Jr., but also with Trump, with Pete Hegseth, with Kristi Noem, with so many of these just ghouls who are destroying our country right now in a variety of different ways.
I couldn't agree more. And you really took the words right out of my mouth. They need to go on record because all of
Yeah.
these people are going to be up for re-election at some point. And wouldn't that be a good thing to be able to tell your constituents, hey, even though we weren't in power, we stood up for you. And when we actually regain power, we're going to follow through with these
Yes.
things. And that is the important part. It's not so much we know that RFK is not going to get removed right now, right?
Yeah.
But if Haley and others take control of the House and the Senate, and now we know on record, oh, this is something they're going to do. I want to vote for that. That
Yeah.
is of importance to me. I want to get him the hell away from my child and the end of the vaccine, recommendations. Like, yes, I think once again, Hakeem Jeffries is such a weak and ineffectual leader. But beyond that, they're just so playing this game of walking this fence, like they're trying to create some sense of, oh, we're going to still work across the aisle. Like the aisle's burned to the ground. Like there is no crossing these aisles. It's either you're for democracy or fascism. Figure it out. I don't understand anyone that can be sort of straddling these spaces. I think that's why everybody is terrified of, John Fetterman right now because he's such a live wire. And it's like, what is he going to do next or say next? And nobody in Pennsylvania, where I'm from, wants to claim him at this point because he's been such an abysmal failure and refusing to stand up for his constituents. So I think this is not the moment for weakness. This is the moment for bold action, for big ideas, and for change. And I think we need
Yeah.
to start seeing that being put into play, not just with words, but with actions, and bringing these letters of impeachment or articles of impeachment, excuse me, are a big part of that, to your point.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think, the very last thing I'll want to say
Yeah,
here is that,
please.
we've been talking about him and his decisions for months now. Through various episodes, you can go back and see all of our different conversations. If you are new here, I recommend doing so. Uh, with that being said, we don't really need to relitigate the different ways in
No.
which he has gone about hurting the American people. But yeah, when you go through the different steps that he has gone through in such a short amount of time, it has been proven multiple times over that he's not fit to be leading HHS. And this is long overdue as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I think too, we've become such a joke around the world by who is in positions of leadership. And you mentioned Hegseth, and he's another one that we can
Yeah.
talk about it, another time, at length. But I think really we've just fallen so far. And the fact remains if we continue down this road with removing vaccinations, we're not going to be allowed to travel outside the United States. Like countries are going to want to demand to see vaccination cards from us because they don't want the possibility of pandemics of any kind, whether it's measles or pertussis or anything, pneumonia. So what we're doing right now isn't funny. It's dangerous and it's having real life impacts. And that to
Yeah.
me is the most terrifying part of this. It's
Like,
not a joke.
for me, the very last thing I want to say here is that, I understand that there are a lot of people out there who are skeptical of the medical industry. Like, I'm a person who has to deal with the medical industry constantly, and I am skeptical of it.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between being skeptical of it and what RFK is doing. RFK is making decisions that are supposed to be rooted in science based on vibes. Like, he is saying that there are problems with healthcare as it's being administered in this country. And instead of providing data and evidence that's backed by lots of studies and lots of trials and consensus of doctors around the world, he's basically just going on the trust me, bro, kind of like, conversation, and then making decisions based off the trust me, bro attitude. And now you're having decisions that make no sense to anyone being implemented throughout our country. And we're all wondering what's next because it seems like these decisions aren't being made on anything other than like what he feels like that particular day. And that's dangerous for so many people. And I just don't understand how he's able to get away with any of this other than the fact that because he's in the Trump administration, no one wants to cross Trump. And so he's kind of insulated underneath that Trump umbrella right now. And this is just all a giant clusterfuck.
It truly is. If you're just joining us, I'm Natalie Bencivenga. I'm with Desmond Price of Independent Thought, and we are talking about some of the news you need to know of the week. I want to move on to an article from the Texas Tribune because I like to use local media whenever I can. And
Yes, I'm obsessed.
yes, U.S. Representative Jasmine Crockett, a Democrat from Dallas, on Monday filed to run for U.S. Senate, scrambling the Democratic field after teasing her potential entry for months. She is a second-term congresswoman. She has sort of skyrocketed to fame with a lot of her viral spats that she's had with the Republican Party. She says there's a lot of people that said, you've got to stay in the House. We need our voice. We need you there. She said Monday, and I understand, but what we need is for me to have a bigger voice. We need to make sure that we are going to stop all the hell that is raining down on all of our people. Crockett joins a field that already includes Austin State Representative James Tallarico, also known as a strong communicator for his progressive brand of Christianity. But her path was made a little easier when Colin Allred decided to exit the race, which he announced earlier this week. As Crockett began to move closer to a bid, she called them, both Aldred and Tallarico, to discuss her internal polling and the prospect of forming a slate, but that did not pan out. So she formally announced at an event on Monday afternoon, more than 200 people, including some Dallas area elected officials and candidates, were in a gymnasium in her southern Dallas district, which is a predominantly Black and Hispanic part of the state's third largest city. I want to get your thoughts first, Desmond, on her running for Senate. Do you think this has anything to do with the fact that they're gerrymandering the hell out of Texas? And also, I then want to get your thoughts on her as a candidate.
Um, they are trying to eliminate Democratic representatives from states all over that are controlled by Republicans right now. Her district was no different. So it was likely that this new district that she was going to be in wasn't going to be one that she'd be able to win. So how many options was she really left with other than to try to run for a statewide race? I don't know that a Democrat can win in Texas, period, right now.
Mhm.
I mean, like, everyone keeps saying, like, oh, at some point, oh, at some point, oh, at some point. The problem is that as the demographics of Texas keep changing, it's only becoming harder because people who were conservatives in like blue states have been going to Texas and Florida, turning them even more red. And so what was a Republican plus 6 state has become a Republican plus 12 or 14 state now. And so the prospect of winning statewide in Texas, no matter who it is becoming really challenging. Now, Jasmine Crockett is powerful enough and has enough of the base around her that she'll probably put a better challenge than anybody else who could run in that state right now. I can't think of another Texas Democrat who could do better than her. With that being said, I don't know if it'll be enough, especially with all the infighting that we've been seeing through people online right now. I mean, they already have a small chance of victory, and I feel like they're only making it smaller with how these conversations have been taking place.
And I want to get into that. I just want to share, too, that despite joining the field late, she poses a clear threat to Tallarico. She has outperformed him in public polling, and she had $4.6 million in cash on hand in the last count. To your point, this was really the conversation I wanted to have with you tonight because I know that the Democrats are going through it. Okay. We have a very divided group of people. And I know that there's some that say, well, the umbrella is big enough for all of us to be under. I don't know if I agree with that because I don't know if everybody's views on the left are really leftist views. I think there's a lot of moderate Republicans that feel ousted from the Republican Party that do not identify with MAGA that have kind of slightly moved a little left. And I think a lot of the corporate Democrats are trying to win their favor instead of rallying the progressive base, which you and I have screamed about for months and months on end. Now, having said that, I am seeing so much, Desmond, online about Jasmine in particular, her stance on policy, how much misogynoir is going to play into this as well. Is she a viable candidate because she's Black, because she's a woman, because she's said pro-Israeli things, because she hasn't stood up enough for healthcare, because. And I'm just curious, do you think this helps us? How do you think it would be? Do you think it would be better to be more constructive? Is there a way to be more constructive with criticisms of her, of the way the party's being run? What are your thoughts? Because a lot of people on the left say she is a corporatist.
I believe she's a corporatist.
Okay.
Um, this is I think a challenging conversation because I think there's a lot of different layers to it. I don't think you can kind of break it down as simply as like, let's just look at it from this lens and just call it a day.
Yep.
I believe that Jasmine Crockett is a corporatist. I don't think that she's really that progressive.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, what I said earlier, I think stands in the sense that I don't think that anyone could win. I don't think that anyone has a better chance of winning than she does. Tallarico doesn't have the name ID that she does. And I just don't believe that he'd be able to rally Texas the way that she would be able to. With that being said, I don't really know either of their platforms well enough to be like, oh, he's better on this issue, she's better on this issue. What I've learned over the last few days, they've both have pretty much the exact same stance on Israel, which was something that was a point of contention amongst all of the debates and controversies that we saw online recently. People talking about like, oh, well, Jasmine Crockett hasn't denounced Israel. She was voting for their she was voting for like spending packages that to be sent to them,
Mm-hmm.
arms packages being sent to them. She kind of crumbled in interviews where she was being asked about these things. And that is all true. But at this exact same time, I don't really know that the guy Tallarico had any different positions. It seems like he did
Right.
not. So either way, that's going to be your representative on the left side. Whoever wins this is going to have similar positions on Israel. So it's kind of a moot point. But the last thing I want to say here, Natalie, is that
Mm-hmm.
it is. I don't know. I think when it comes to Jasmine Crockett, when it comes to like the Democratic Party as a whole right now, we're trying to talk about like, oh, should we be rallying the progressive base or should we be going towards trying to like, get off these disaffected Republicans? It feels like the Democratic Party is at this like divide right now, and they don't really know what to do with themselves. They don't know if they want to kind of lean more towards like the Obama era or if they want to go forward with this like let's go be more progressive. And there is a true kind of divide down the middle. And I think you're seeing that play out online right now, where there are some people who are trying to drag us back to Obama politics and some people who are trying to go forward with more like Bernie style politics. And I'm not really sure where it's going to end up.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was thinking about this too, because I feel like she's a perfect example of the conversation happening in the party. And I think once again, I agree. I've been trying to dig into more of her platforms. And because, like I said, I'm just reading a lot of conflicting stuff about her. And obviously, this is, she would be representing Texas. And obviously, any Democrat, in my opinion, is still going to be head and shoulders better than having MAGA controlling everything. But
Yeah.
I think when we're talking about who we want to align with moving forward, I keep going back to people first policies, because if you lead with, hey, we need to raise the wage. Hey, we need Medicare for all. Hey, we need affordable housing. Hey, billionaires shouldn't control everything. We should be taxing the rich. Like, to me, those are very common sense policies that would attract both a progressive person as well as a person that maybe identifies as a more moderate Republican. I still think that there's a way forward here with messaging, but we're just missing the mark because we do have a lot of people still from the establishment, from the DNC, that are running things in a very 1996 way. And I
Yeah.
think when it comes to leadership, that's what concerns me more, Desmond, than some of these individual races, is the leadership angle. And I would love to see a people first leader, somebody that says, yes, we should be impeaching Trump. We should be presenting articles every single day for the next, how many more months until the midterms? We should be
Right.
doing all the things. We should be out there every day on a microphone with every news outlet that'll cover us, every independent creator talking about all of the horrible things that he has done just in the past 24 hours. Like, I would tune into that every morning. It's just, to me, there needs to be more energy to combat the fascism that we are seeing really taking root in this country. And I think that's what scares me the most, is this wishy-washy energy that we're seeing from the established Democrats in power ain't it. And there's a reason she's a firebrand. I may not agree with everything that she's standing for, but I appreciate her willingness to say the things that need to be said. And I think that's what people are looking for right now, are people that are just willing to stick out their necks. Because I'm not going to agree with every candidate on every issue. I'm not. But I appreciate people that are willing to say the quiet parts out loud. And she's one of the few that's willing to do it.
Yeah. I think the only thing that really bothers me a lot about this whole thing is that when I see people having these conversations online, there are those who just want to kind of like squash dissent. There are people who are
Yeah,
very behind Jasmine Crockett for a variety of reasons.
sure.
And they try to paint their support of this candidate being like, hey, you can't really question them. You can't raise your concerns about them. If you do, then I don't like how you did, or you didn't do it enough for other people, so you can't do it here. Or the fact that you're doing it here means that you're automatically, coming from a place of misogynoir. And it's just like, I just don't like how we are trying to silence dissent. Like, if a person is running for office, they should be under scrutiny. Like, the end. Like, just the end. And the question is whether or not the question is a valid question or not.
Hmm.
If it seems like
Hmm.
it's an unvalid question, then, obviously let's talk about racism, let's talk about sexism, misogynoir. But like, if someone is being asked about their particular answer to a question or their particular stance on an issue, well, did they say it or not? Did they have this stance or not? And it feels like you try to sidestep that by playing identity politics sometimes. And this is where it gets like tricky for me, because as a Black person, I understand how important it is to talk about race in America. I understand how important it is to confront like racist ideology, not just on the right, but also on the left. So like, this is unfortunately a really complicated, like kind of like lane to navigate. But I feel like two things can be true at the exact same time. There is racism that she's experiencing, there is sexism that she's experiencing, and there's also a sidestepping of accountability, kind of like guised behind identity politics. And I think that that part is really bothering me a lot.
And that's a fair statement. And I hear that, and from the sexism perspective, I absolutely can see that as well, and I also understand the racism angle of it, but I think it's a dangerous thing when we patronize people and not um call the things out that we need to call out. Like you said, when someone is running for office, we do need to understand what their stances are, and that to me is independent of race and sex. Like, we should know where she stands on Medicare for all. We should know where she stands on Gaza. I mean,
Yeah.
I would ask that of any candidate, regardless of their identity.
You know what? At the end, people will love to say that white candidates don't get the same kind of treatment, but I have been hearing people constantly getting on Bernie Sanders' case for not calling it a genocide
That's
for
right.
years and years now. So I
Hmm.
don't know. I think we just need to be holding everyone to account for these issues that everyone's obviously animated on. Like,
Yeah.
we have been going into this season saying that it is more important than ever
Yes.
that we are
Mhm.
holding people to account in the primaries, because it's not just about defeating the Republicans, it's also about sending the right Democrats into these races. I'm so tired of being in these conversations where it's like, you have to vote for this person because if you don't, then you're destroying the country. But then this candidate's allowed to essentially never change anything about their platform and get away with it. They're basically just giving you an ultimatum: vote for me or you're burning our country down. It's just like, okay, what responsibility do you have in this role? Like, are you willing to actually listen to what we are telling you that we want? And it feels
Mhm.
like over and over and over again, they are responding to us with the answer of no.
Oof. Well, and that goes into a whole other conversation for another time
Yeah.
around, are our elected officials acting like little kings and queens instead of like people that work for the American people? Because it's getting harder to access them, and it's getting harder for them uh, to, or it's getting harder to interact with them in a meaningful way. And I think there's reasons for that. And we can blame the Trump regime for setting up that dynamic. Um, Talking about the Trump regime, there's always more to talk about. ABC News put out an article today, because it is the 10th. I love that I'm not aware of what day it is. The Trump administration moves to end major student loan forgiveness plan. We will not tolerate it, is what the headline says. And I love this said subheadline, because we can talk about this. The law is clear. If you take out a loan, you must pay it back. Whew, I got thoughts on that. The Department of Education has moved to terminate one of former President Joe Biden's most popular student loan forgiveness plans, which will impact millions of Americans through a proposed joint settlement with the state of Missouri on Tuesday. The pending agreement ends the Saving on a Valuable Education, or known as SAVE plan, which is home to 7 million student loan borrowers. It makes a major victory for the Trump administration's efforts to claw back any and all Biden era policies, including Biden's numerous efforts to implement student loan debt cancellation. Officials in the Trump administration's Department of Education, who decried those policies for months, suggested the administration is righting a wrong by ending the deceptive scheme of student loan forgiveness. Now, Biden administration touted the plan for including $0 payments for anyone making $16 an hour or less. Remember, the minimum federal wage is $7.25, lowering monthly payments for millions of borrowers and protecting borrowers from runaway interest if they are making their monthly payments. Now, the law is clear. If you take out a loan, you must pay it back. Under Secretary of Education Nicholas Kent said in a release from the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, the WWF person. Thanks to the state of Missouri and other states fighting against this egregious federal overreach, American taxpayers can now rest assured they will no longer be forced to serve as collateral for illegal and irresponsible student loan policies. Just kill me now. I just, whew. I read this earlier, Desmond, and I was
Yeah.
like, I was screaming at my computer because there's just so many things wrong with what I just read to you and to everyone. But please
Yeah.
share your thoughts on visceral reactions first.
I think after a while, like, the one thing I struggle with is having these conversations the same way that everyone else does, because let me just say this. The first thing that we usually do when we're in this space and we talk about these particular news headlines is we try to rationalize it. We're like, okay, let's all sit down with each other and talk about like how this is wrong and like how we can, fact check their information, and let's talk about like why their stance on like, well, the law is the law. Like, let's talk about like all the different, exceptions here.
Mhm.
And my brain wants to fall into that trap too, but I feel like it is a trap in the sense that I know that they don't care. They don't care. They know what they're doing is wrong, and they don't care. Uh, this is about a project at the end of the day for them. They are on a decades long project the way they were with Roe. This is the new one. This is
Mhm.
not just about college at the end of the day. This is actually about education as a whole in America. They are attacking at multiple levels education, at the post secondary level, at the secondary level, at the elementary level. They want to go after American education to the sense where they are turning these public entities into being so undesirable that you just feel compelled to go into private institutions, which they will control, and that
Mhm.
they will control the curriculum. They'll be able to profit off of it, and they will be able to essentially turn the country into a bunch of brainless dimwits because they know that an actual informed electorate is bad for their brand. That is
Mm.
what this whole project is about. They want to destroy the American education system because it is actually waking people up to how corrupt and fucked up they are. And they do not like that. And they see this as an existential threat to themselves. and their entire MAGA project. And so this is just another piece, along with something that we saw another creator talk about today about how they are now labeling different universities on FAFSA applications as being universities that don't really give out great returns for people who go to these schools. Like if you go to this school, your degree may not land you a good job. They're now putting these like labels on FAFSA applications. They want you to not go to college. They want college to be undesirable for you. That is the end goal of all of this. They want it to seem like going to college is just not that great of an idea. And it's working. It is. Less and less people are going to college. And so
Mm-hmm.
I am afraid of the larger project here, Natalie, because this story is actually, unfortunately, a microcosm of the bigger picture here, which is they are attacking the education system every way they can think of because they want to destroy it.
Everything you said was just so heavy and real. And it's like
Yeah,
almost overwhelming for your nervous system because
a little bit.
I I loved school as a kid. I loved school. I loved learning. I loved being curious. I loved figuring things out that were really hard. I loved having to complete things in a way that I was under a timer and had to do things. Like I loved school. I had so many great teachers that instilled in me this desire to question authority, to question the status quo, to study things that I may never need because
Yeah,
it's just interesting and it makes you practice how you think, right? I was a philosophy major along with being a biology major in college. Philosophy, people could be like, why the hell did you? I'm sure on my FAFSA return, it would have said, this does not have a good return on investment, right?
yeah,
I think it had the best return of investment because it not only made me think critically, and taught me how to think, but it opened my mind to the ways in which other people explored the universe. And it made me think about how I want to interact. It taught me how to be a human in a way that a science class can teach you in a different way, right? Um, and I really hate more than anything, Desmond, how they are sucking the life out of the love of learning from this country. That's
yep,
what kills me. To your point, it is, and we can talk about it in that nuts and bolts way, right? Where it's like they're destroying our education system. They're destroying our creativity, our desire to navigate the universe in new and innovative ways. And then what they're going to do is they're going to complain that they can't find people to fulfill these jobs that they're going to need, right? Who's going to be the next XYZ of whatever company? Who's going to start a company? Who's going to find a solution to a problem we don't even know we have yet? And this idea too that college is going to be concentrated into the hands of the rich and the wealthy elite, right? And the rest of us are going to, like you said, not just not be encouraged, but not even be able to have the skills and the basic um abilities to then apply for college. If I was in charge, my god, I would take the absolute opposite approach. I would make higher education all the way down at any public school and university free, and it would be this incredible experience of learning because we want to be better citizens and people towards each other. And I think that's the other part of this that kills me because all these book bans and all of that this feeds all into this, right? Because when you limit people in their experience of the other, then you can really direct where they turn their empathy to and if they have empathy. And I remember some of I grew up in a very white community. I only knew a few people of color as a young child. And I remember a lot of the books I read introduced me to people from all over the world who lived all different types of lives. That's where I learned about multiculturalism. It was from my love of reading that was instilled in me by teachers that cared about it. I mean, I'm getting choked up just thinking about it because that's how I built empathy and compassion was reading books.
yeah,
And I thought, oh, wow, that's terrible that happened to that kid in the 1950s in the South. And it was a fictional novel, right? But it was about a topic I didn't know anything about. And that's how I learned. And then when I was in the real world, I started looking at people differently because I realized everybody's got a story and I should respect it. And I think this is such a disservice to our future as not just a nation, but as a people. And how dare they? How dare they think that they have the right to dismantle a system that does not belong to them? It belongs to all of us. Trump is renting, right? Like he lives in our White House for a moment. He rents that space from us. And the idea that he can go there and think, I'm going to dismantle the things that do not belong to me physically with the East Wing, for example, but also much more importantly, metaphorically um, and psychologically. It's terrifying to me. And McMahon, she's a billionaire. She doesn't give a shit about
Yeah.
kids getting an education. This is abhorrent. It's
Yeah.
abhorrent. Education should be free. Period.
It should be.
Belongs to all of us.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add one more quote, if I can find it, because I wanted to get your thoughts on this specifically. McMahon, who is a vocal critic of the student loan forgiveness, she said the administration will no longer allow the American taxpayer to take on debts that are not their own. I literally burst out laughing when I read that. I literally burst out laughing. Yeah, they will no longer allow American taxpayers to take on debts that are not their own.
What?
Could we start with the wars then? Could we not be taking on that debt?
My mind immediately went to like the military budget. I was like, what are we talking about here? Like,
Right.
what are we talking about? Like, you have like
Mhm.
the most like this is why they want to destroy the education system, because they don't want people to realize how quick, just how, at all, but a matter of seconds, just how much of a laughable statement that is. Like,
Yeah.
it is mind-boggling to be like, oh, the American taxpayer should have to be dealt with this. American taxpayer shouldn't have to deal with that. I'm like, you know what? This American taxpayer would not like to be dealing with all the corporate subsidies, would not like to be having my money going to foreign wars. I don't want my taxpayer money going to blowing up boats off of the coast of Venezuela or bombing people in Iran or bombing people in Somalia. And yet that's what it's been doing over the last year. But like, this American taxpayer has no control over that. So I mean, like, don't lecture me about what the American taxpayer wants. My taxes are used every day for things I don't want them used for. I don't want them being sent to Argentina in a bailout package for your buddy. Like, this is bullshit. So, you know what? Linda, a billionaire, lecturing people about how money is being spent is laughable to me. Like,
Yes.
go back to the WWE. Nobody, you were never, you were less qualified to run the Department of Education than RFK Jr. is to run HHS. That's how bad this is.
And that's saying something.
That, you know what? Honestly, going full circle, that is, I legitimately feel that way. I would think that he actually is more qualified to run that department than she is to run education. She does not belong there. It is a farce. She is a joke.
She is a joke. And to piggyback off of what you were just saying about money we don't want to be spending and talking about that military budget, we're going to round this conversation out by finishing with a topic that Desmond and I discuss a lot on the show together around ICE and talking about that bloated budget and where our money is going. The ACLU just released a report saying that detained immigrants detail physical abuse and inhumane conditions at largest immigration center in the United States. That's where our tax dollars are going, okay? In a letter calling to end immigration detention at Fort Bliss, interviews with 45 individuals reported physical and sexual abuse, medical neglect, and intimidation to self-deport. This is happening here in the United States on our dime. At the largest immigration detention site in the country, officers beat up Samuel, a detained teenager who is using a pseudonym, so badly that he had to go to the hospital. His right front tooth was broken. He said one officer grabbed him by the testicles and crushed them, while another forced his fingers deep into his ears. He added that weeks after the beating, damage to his left ear was so severe that now he has trouble hearing. I don't even know where we go from here as a country. If we hear a story like that and we can say to ourselves, oh, but it's in the name of national security. Like, there's nowhere to go. I can't remember who said it, Desmond. I want to say it was Jefferson. It could have been Franklin, but it said, He who takes security over freedom denies or does not deserve security or freedom.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on what's going on with ICE?
Man, what is there left to say that we haven't
I
already
know.
said? I mean, I I feel like I'm listening to accounts from Guantanamo Bay all over again.
Yeah.
Like it feels like Donald Trump is running a crueler and more just like more brazenly corrupt, more brazenly like cartoonishly stupid version of George W. Bush's presidency. Like we are bringing back torture camps. We are bringing back just expanding government power. We are bringing back imperialism. Like it's just like just like I can't get over it. Government surveillance is going up again. Like I'm gutted listening to the accounts that we are hearing right now, and I have been for a while. I saw that two more people died in ICE custody. We saw Pramila Jayapal referencing that, saying that more people have died in ICE custody in the last year than there have been in the last like 2 decades. So, because ICE has been around since it was founded during the Bush administration.
Yep.
So I just, I don't know. Like I'm sick to my stomach. Because like again, this kind of like falls into the conversation that we had before about like like oh well, I was talking about RFK Jr. Like we don't really need to be talking about like all the different things about ICE again because we've been doing it all year. But like it is, I don't. ICE should not exist. ICE should be abolished. We do not
Period.
need this agency to exist in order to have a functioning immigration system. The system is broken at the legislative level. If you want to change problems with immigration, it starts with the asylum laws that you have on the books because people are doing the legal right thing. They are coming to our border. They are claiming asylum. This is a law that we have on the books. They then have to wait for a trial, which we have a backup because we have not enough immigration judges. Trump is exacerbating that by firing immigration judges. So there's even less of them to hear these cases. And so people have to wait in our country with essentially an illegal status because they haven't had their immigration hearing yet. And so they have to find work in the meantime. And so that's how you have so many undocumented people in this country who came here legally through a port of entry, waiting to be seen by a judge. And then we have Trump rounding them up as if they've done something wrong when they are literally just following the procedure they were told to follow when they came to our country. It is all disgusting and it's literally all a lie. And he has sold this lie to his people, his base, because they're all such like foment racists that they just believe that brown person in my country means that they came here illegally and they violated some law. Plus, you have Fox's propaganda network constantly going with the whole like, look at this caravan of people invading our country. Look at this caravan of migrants invading our country. It's an invasion. It's an invasion. And so we have millions of people warped up just wanting to have mass deportations because they think that some laws are being broken, but there are no laws being broken by these people. There are laws being broken by Trump, who is violating their human rights over and over and over again as a spectacle to buoy his fucking plummeting approval rating right now because he thinks that that's the only way they can keep himself popular with his base because otherwise they're going to just throw him out the doors right now because he hasn't delivered on any of his other promises they said he was going to deliver on. Prices keep going up and people are pissed at him right now. And he's using these people as his outlet to keep himself popular. And I can't get over it now. I'm sorry I'm rambling right now, but I cannot get over the fact that he is using cruelty and essential internment, enslavement as a way to keep himself popular in America. And too many people are comfortable with this.
Thank you for sharing all of your thoughts. I feel just so ashamed to just be an American at this point and to know that my tax dollars are going to support the torture and abuse and murder of innocent people. I'm also just sick and tired. I post a lot about ICE on my social media, and I always get the same idiots saying the same things to me, which is, well, they're illegals. They're illegals. They broke the law. These are scum, blah, blah, blah. I don't care what their status is with their paperwork. I don't care. Okay. Like, I need you all to understand that these are people that have been working and living in communities, some of them for years, whether they have the paperwork or not, this whole like idea that this magic paper um then should prevent someone from harming you, that you deserve harm if you don't have the magic paper, is so grotesque to me, so disgusting on every level. Like, you don't need to have an opinion on this conversation. These are, first of all, this used to just be a civil law situation where it's like, this is just paperwork, guys. This idea that we've taken this status, and that's why I have always refused to talk about it in legality. I always just say what you said, undocumented or documented, because it's a lot less charged. And you learn as a journalist and as a content creator that the words you use matter, the framing of words matter. And so when we use charged language, it riles people up. And that's what Fox News, faux news, as I call them, and the like, do so well, is a framework of conversation. This is paperwork we're talking about. In fact, we know that immigrants they're less likely to commit crimes because they have more to lose, right? And so to me, and they chose to be here. They want to be here. They want to build a life here. There's a sense of pride there too. So this idea that if you don't want this to happen to you, then you shouldn't have done X, Y, and Z. You know who says that? Abusers. I've worked with people that have lived through domestic and intimate partner violence. That is the literal rhetoric of an abuser is, well, if you didn't want this to happen, you shouldn't have looked at me that way, or you shouldn't have made the wrong meal for dinner, or you shouldn't have worn that dress I don't like. That's why I hurt you. That's the same rhetoric. And who's applying to be a part of ICE? Those dudes, the worst of the worst. We know that. They can't pass physicals. They're not passing background checks. We know that. So I really hope that we start waking up, and I really hope that we collectively decide to withhold our federal tax dollars. I hope our governors join forces in doing this, and I hope individuals consider this year when they go to file their taxes that they instead put their federal taxes in a escrow account and see what happens. Because at this point, I think the only card we can play is with our money, our collective dollars, and just say we're not giving any more money to the federal government if ICE continues to exist. That's where I'm at. I've been there for 8 months, but that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's a whole separate conversation. I think about like how you can protest, because I think unfortunately there might be some bad effects that might come from that, even though I agree with the premise of it. Yeah, Natalie, it's just I think I don't want to go on another long tangent here. I know that we've been going on for a while here, but I think for me, I cannot get over the abject cruelty. And I also just can't get over it kind of just ties back into the education problem. You know, because the uninformed are usually the people who are MAGA supporters. And it takes literally a really small amount of time to explain about how less than 10% of the undocumented people in this country came into this country like not through a port of entry, which means that they all are here following our laws for the most part. Like over 90% of them come here following our laws, and they're being treated as they're criminals, even though they did exactly what we told them to do. And when you break it down that simply, it should change the entire paradigm of how we're having this conversation. And I think for too many, it doesn't. And then for too many more, they don't even seem to know that. So which branches into a whole separate conversation about like how propaganda is spewed in this country and what people choose to believe and so on and so forth. But even if you don't go down any of that route, like you were saying before, whether they are undocumented or not, that shouldn't give you this license to just abuse people. Could you imagine how deranged of a human being you have to be in order to torture a child in a prison? I just like, that's the kind of stuff that, you know, we are hearing in other parts of the world that we are constantly condemning. And to hear that it's happening here in our country, like, I just, like, it's disgusting. It's sick. It's sick. Like, I know it's not going to happen, but I just desperately want, like, when this Trump era comes to an end, I think that the nation probably cannot heal if people are not being put on trial for the things that they've done.
Amen.
You know, we didn't do it in the past. Like, people who tortured those in Guantanamo should have been put on trial. Those people should never have escaped that, and yet they did. And I think that as time goes on, if you really want to find the country healing in some way, knowing that there is accountability for the things that are being done, then people have to be put on trial for these things because there is no way that that should ever be allowed to happen in this country.
No. And we have to set that precedent because why wouldn't it happen again then? Right?
Yeah,
Um, Desmond, thank you so much. I know we went a little long tonight, but I really appreciate you
yeah,
taking time to connect with me and with our audiences. And if you want to follow us, if you want to subscribe to our work, you can do so above. Both of us are here, and we both post very regularly here as well as on Instagram, Threads, YouTube. We're kind of everywhere, you guys. So make sure you check out our work. We appreciate you. And until next time, just take care of yourselves and each other. Thanks, Desmond. Bye, everybody.